Today we're going to talk about Aileen Wuornos. Aileen is what's called a serial killer. And this happened back in the 80s, and she killed 7 men. And Greg, why don't you tell us about the videos we're going to look at?
Yes, so we're going to have 2 videos. The first is from Dateline, and it is right after she was put on death row. The second is her last interview, I believe, and it's from a show called Life and Death of a Serial Killer in 2002. Now, what we're going to do is to look at her body language, not necessarily the details of her story into that. We're about body language and behavior. So let's do it.
She says she killed to protect herself.
You say you are not a serial killer.
I'm not a serial killer, and I'm not a murderer. I know that when I die, I'm going to heaven, and I'm going to have Jesus right beside me. And I'm going to have them on Judgment Day in front of me, and they're going to pay for their wrongdoing. I am innocent. It was self-defense.
The legal system didn't believe you.
I do not regret it. Do not regret it. They were going to kill me. I killed them. That is a normal thing to do. It's a human thing. I did the right thing, or I wouldn't be here today.
Okay, Chase, what do you got?
I think her level of conviction here is very common in serial killers, but rarely in women. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, why women become serial killers and what the beliefs are and how they've changed since the 1970s to today. The blink rate, which indicates how focused she is or how focused any person is on something that's in front of them, an increasing blink rate would mean that someone's becoming stressed. Lower blink rate typically indicates focus. Her blink rate is nearly 0. So she is hyper-focused because the person in front of her is not a threat. The violating that person or violating that person's trust on camera where everybody's going to see it is probably the threat that is making her become this focused. So we see her doing 2 things here, which are common with criminals. The first one is socializing, this is a normal thing. Anyone would have done this in the same situation. And the second is distancing. So we see a lot of distancing language in here, but I'm just going to focus on one word. If she was the victim of a horrific crime and she's trying to tell her story, which she is clearly right here, she's using the word wrongdoing instead of the name of the crime. She doesn't use torture or hurt or rape or any of these horrific words that she could be using to help paint this picture. She uses the word wrongdoing, which we typically, or we're more likely to see in people who are being deceptive. And I think this is a perfect example of lying versus deception versus delusion versus something that many experts might call a false memory. And I think we're going to get a little deeper into this as we go deeper into these videos. But that's all I got for this one. Scott, what do you got?
All right. When she says, you say you're not a serial killer, she says, I'm not a serial killer and I'm not a murderer. What's up? Now, a lot of times liars, when they're lying, they'll illustrate heavy, man. They'll come on really strong. So that's what we're seeing. Her head's bobbing really good. Her illustrators are coming on strong. A little bit too much. Now, comparatively, let's pay attention to this now because we see we're going to have another set of videos from later on, and this totally changes. So it's important to pay attention to this. When she shakes her head, yes. When she nods her head, yes. When she says, I'm not a murderer, that's more of an affirmative. I'm not a murderer, instead of, did you do it? No, I didn't, and shaking your head. Big difference there. So I think that's what's happening there. You're right, Chase, you nailed it. Her blink rate is just at the floor, man. It's hardly anything. Another cue or indication that she's, being deceptive because her eyes are wide open and she's just talking, just making sure everything's good, making sure everything's cool. And then the interviewer says, the legal system didn't believe you. And this is where she almost loses her temper. But she gets a hold of it. She starts to freak out on her, but then she gets a hold of it. So we're seeing explosive anger out of this woman, and that's probably what happened just before the murders happened. I'm sure when we hear later on what happened, I'm sure that might have been the setup to him. And then she says it's a normal thing to do. When she talks about defending herself, it's a normal human thing to do. I think she's been called a monster so much, and she knows something's wrong as psychopaths do, but she's not sure what. She just knows she doesn't fit in the way she should. She's trying to be like a human. That's why from now on I refer to her as it. So when you hear me saying it, I'll be talking about it because there's nobody in there. It's just a body running around. That's my opinion anyway. So if you hear me say it, that's what I'm talking about. And then the whole time we're seeing facial cues of anger. Her nostrils are flared. She's she's showing her teeth. All kinds of stuff, heavy breathing, and that dead eye in her heart on, and just looking straight and bouncing her head. Man, these are completely. This is a person who's full of anger. Greg, what do you got?
Well, a few things. If I look at her for like a normal human being, like she wants you to look at her, then I see a couple of things that stand out. All of her movements are giant. All of her facial expressions are oversized. And she's iterative storytelling. Those are the two first things I notice. She's got a lot of residual lines in her forehead, or Chase, you would call it etching. That indicates she uses her forehead a lot. And I don't know how old she is in this picture. I don't remember. But I would expect to see that forehead rise and use it a lot, whether she's browbeating or asking for approval, and she does. If you've never seen people who overact and use their body language a lot in their facial expressions, you haven't hung out in enough redneck places. Because I'll tell you, I worked at a country bar where there were normal people and some really hardcore rednecks, and that larger-than-life behavior was normal for some of those guys. They'd start to telegraph to you, hey, this is about to turn to a fight, and all that kind of body language. I would say, and you're going to hear me say something I always say, the organism does what made the organism successful. If she's been a prostitute since 16 years old, larger-than-life facial expressions might have been a good part of how she managed to make her way and that kind of thing. Scott, I told you I'd make you laugh out loud. She's the Jerry Lee Lewis of serial killers. She's got all that crazy big body language.
Yeah, man.
That's exactly what I see here. She's got a whole lot of that stuff going on. If you watch her eyes bug, that larger than normal eye, she illustrates by peeling her eyelids back. If you watch her throughout this video, you're going to see it. She does some iterative storytelling. When she drops words like, I am innocent, she's trying to get the person to poke back because that gives her her second opportunity to tell that story. What I typically associate those kinds of lies with iterative storytelling are lies of embellishment. I'm going to make things that happen bigger than they are. And that doesn't mean that she doesn't believe everything she's saying. She could quite literally believe everything she's saying. Doesn't mean it's true. And what we're seeing here is a person who's trying to get you on their side. I agree with you, Scott, when she gets to the point where she thinks the person has wronged her, she starts browbeating. That brow starts going down instead of up. I'll just leave it at that. There's some other things here, but this is her trying to show her innocence. And then when you don't believe her, you see that forehead starting to go down. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so something a bit different with this, which is the, let's just say, metaphysical non-verbal communication going on, which is the stories that she's telling and what's the body language going on in those stories. Well, she is beside Jesus. And if you have close proximity to somebody, it means that the relationship is intimate. So she's saying, hey, I got an intimate relationship with Jesus. And then she's saying that they're going to be beside her on Judgment Day. So at that moment of judgment, those to be judged will be beside her, and she's right next to Jesus. So she's drawing a complete line from the highest power, highest authority, and I would suggest probably her ability to judge. So we might say she's starting to suggest that she has a messianic complex, in that she believes that she's all powerful and has the ability to judge on a soul level people, which is quite extraordinary. She says not about this, but this idea of that people had to the killing that she did. That is a normal thing, as everybody said. That is a human thing. So she goes from it's normal. Not only that, it's human. That denotes that maybe, as Scott said, somebody had said at some point, you're not human. You're an animal. You're a monster. You're something other than human. She then takes it a step further to say it's the right thing. So she's really good at creeping the project a little bit and going, if you thought I was a monster, let me just tell you that I'm human, and actually let me tell you that I'm actually moral. So that's a very fast movement that she makes from animal to actually most moral human being. In fact, highest morality, in that she is directly connected to in many people's religions, somebody who can deal down the death of the soul or the life of the soul everlasting. Extraordinary thing to get across in that amount of time. Amazing. That's what I got for you.
She says she killed to protect herself.
You say you are not a serial killer.
I'm not a serial killer, and I'm not a murderer. I know that when I die, I'm going to heaven, and I'm going to have Jesus right beside me. And I'm going to have them on Judgment Day in front of me, and they're going to pay for their wrongdoing. I am innocent. It was self-defense.
The legal system didn't believe you.
I do not regret it. I do not regret it. They were going to kill me. I killed them. That is a normal thing to do. It's a human thing. I did the right thing, or I wouldn't be here today.
Cool.
How young were you when you first began prostituting?
16.
Why did you do it the first time?
I was on the road. I was a teenager, homeless.
Wuornos had run away from home after having a child at age 14, which she was forced to give up for adoption. She worked the roads for sex and money.
I made a lot of friends, and I loved it. I loved it.
I wanted friends.
Yeah, I loved the social communication. I loved the sex. I loved the fun we had. I loved the communication we had. I liked the friendship.
Do you understand that for some people, they would find that strange? In other words, that they couldn't imagine getting love and attention in that way.
I don't understand what's so strange about it. You just made a bunch of friends. So what?
Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so if you go watch the interview with the psychologist who dealt with this woman, she says that she's one of the most primitive people she ever met. And by that, she means that she is psychologically the age of 3 or 4. She doesn't know limits or rules. She knows they exist. She just has no idea what they are. You can see some of that as this person. There's some pride, and you guys correct me if you see something different than I do, but that's a real smile, and that chin goes up as she's proud of that prostitution at 16. And then she's got a look of confusion at, why did you do it? As her brow knits and her shoulders go up, like, what else would I do? It's just, it escapes her what is normal behavior. And then when she says a teenager and the homeless thing, her chin rises again. There's justification here. When she says friends, that is a fishing expedition. That's iterative storytelling at its best. Because what she wants is that interviewer to say, what do you mean by friends? Now she can tell her story, but she doesn't bite. She lets her roll, and that iterative storytelling fails. That's kind of, when I say iterative storytelling, it's kind of a chaff letting you pick up on their leads, something intentionally done. It reminds me of interrogator school. When you missed a lead, they would make those long drawn out sentences so you would pick it up again, and then you would figure out their story. That's just bait. She does a little downright as she's looking around, but this woman has no understanding of what is normal, or, I mean, if you go listen to her life story, or even to this entire show, go look up what happened to this woman's life. It's a circus. It is just a horrible circus, a circus of errors. Scott, what do you got?
All right. When she says 16, you're right, Greg. Yeah, we see it's a real smile, but just before that, we see that chin jut and that mouth closed, and she looks like a little kid. She's proud of that, and she probably was at the time, because when she got kicked out of the house or she left, she's like, how am I going to make a living? What am I going to do? And that's what she decided to do. But she looks at it like, I have a job. It's something I'm proud of. Even though she knows this is something that's frowned upon. And this is the closest thing to a real emotion we're going to see with her. I can't remember if we're keeping, we've got one more as well. Right. But this is the closest thing we see to a real emotion throughout this whole thing, except for the second one we'll see, which of course we'll point out. Because I believe too, Greg, I think that's a real smile. I think that's what's happening there. Her movements are fluid. They're smooth. She doesn't seem all keyed up. She's talking at a pretty good gait there. You know, she's going right along. Her voice is a little bit higher. It's softer. She's not as loud. So she's talking about something she's proud of at that point. Yeah. And then she mentions friendship twice. So that's important to her. Maybe she has problems or had problems making friends. And the only one she could make, she was out doing that, I guess. Gosh, that's a rough life. So that's what I got on that one. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, she had a horrific life like that. Obviously, kids can't choose who their parents are and who their family is. And she won the most horrific lottery of having the worst family ever. But right here at the beginning of this video, or this clip, there's immediate eye movement to what, as we're seeing it, as you're going to see it, is the 9 o'clock position. And I think this might be a good baseline for us to look for positive, truthful recall. And she's proud. I do think that's pride. Greg, what you were saying is she's proud that she did this at a young age, and it makes her, I think, tough. And I think most likely because of the abuse that she suffered, her making the choice to do this, to interact with these men instead of her being interacted with against her will, felt powerful. And I think it's her kind of reasserting control over her own body. The one thing we see here where there's some potential deception is during the phrase, "I loved the sex" part of this. There's a single shoulder shrug that goes up, which indicates somebody's not very confident in what they're saying. There's a head tilt toward the negative side. So when she gestures to anything negative, she's using her right hand. So over and over and over throughout this interview, the whole video, there's a tiny grief muscle on the forehead. And I had to watch it a couple of times. I didn't see it at first. And there's a very small, sad micro expression on the lower face. Just all of that just during or immediately following the "I loved the sex" statement. And I genuinely think, as an outcast teenager with almost zero friends, and we already know she was bullied in school, the currency, and I do think it was currency to her, the currency of having friends became her blueprint for how powerful and impactful she was in the world. So whatever's lacking in her life was that, and that becomes the adult. So whatever's lacking in childhood tends to become currency for a growing adult. That's my opinion. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. So I would say multiple indicators there of defiance. So that for me is that pride and aggression at the same time. I think the question there around the movement into prostitution, she's defiant against that. We see exposure here of vulnerable area in the body. We see that the chin come forward, kind of presenting that almost to be hit. We see that classically in Mussolini, who would present that chin as a defiant, gesture of a monarch on a coin, almost saying, "This is how tough I am. This is how hard I am. I minted this strong." And then we get an upper teeth smile from her as well, which is not particularly in that element kind of the true smile. It's more of a smile of aggression, or certainly the true smile of aggression, showing those upper incisors there. So really quite defiant. I like on Friends, and I think everybody's picked up on there's something important going on there around Friends. She does elongate it, but also she puts some vocal fry on it as well, which is unusual for that particular period of history, and I would suggest it's not entirely usual. It's not really expected from her. I think she's putting extra stress on Friends, not only by elongating, but creating the vocal fry. The vocal fry is one way that causes us to attend to a specific area or specific part of a sentence. It's used often to create a sense of sarcasm in something, or actually you'll get a lot of vocal fry when somebody's truly screaming, when they are truly giving that blood-curdling scream. One of the things that alerts us is not only the cadence, the tonality of it, but also does it have vocal fry in it, because the distortion there is designed to alert us to something really important is happening right now. So a lot going on in that one. There, I'm done.
Hey, one thing we should point out is culture changes everything, right? And if this person has lived her life in a world we don't understand, there's going to be a lot of things we don't understand. That 3 to 4 year old thing the psychologist said, and Chase, you hit it. I mean, if you want to hear a horror story, when I say a circus, it's a circus of terror. You go look at this person's life was just hell. And as they grow, they're just layering and layering and layering more stuff there. So
I think it's a good example of the difference in a psychopath who's born. You have the nature versus nurture, and this might be a nurture type, because when psychopaths are little, that those emotions aren't nourished by the parents, let's say. So that's a long story. We'll get into it later.
How young were you when you first began prostituting?
16.
Why did you do it the first time?
I was on the road. I was a teenager, homeless.
Wuornos had run away from home after having a child at age 14, which she was forced to give up for adoption. She worked the roads for sex and money.
I made a lot of friends, and I loved it. I loved it. I
wanted friends.
Yeah, I loved the social communication. I loved the sex. I loved the fun we had. I loved the communication we had. I liked the friendship.
Do you understand that for some people, they would find that strange? In other words, that they couldn't imagine getting love and attention in that way.
I don't understand what's so strange about it. You just made a bunch of friends, so what? Well, I heard that he raped a 7-year-old girl, and so I didn't really care. He raped a little girl and killed her, and it didn't. Anybody who rapes, to me, is a sick, deranged piece of puke that doesn't even deserve to live.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so really simple here. What really interests me about this is the dehumanizing language that she uses here. So look, you know, either this particular person did rape somebody, didn't rape somebody, I don't know. I don't know whether she truly knows. She just heard it, is what is her story there. And I don't know any other story outside of that. So she hears that thing, and what she does is she makes him a piece of puke, which is literally disgusting. A piece of puke is something which is disgustory. It comes out of your stomach. It's not in your stomach, it's disgustory. So she makes him something which is disgusting to her, certainly not human, and that's going to allow her to perpetrate crimes on somebody without too much feeling for it. Yes, it may be the case that she doesn't have a great deal of pity or remorse or love or sensitivity to harm, which is the 4 factors that you kind of expect with psychopathy. At the same time, she's also able to use language here and imagery that doesn't make this person a human being. And that's really important if you want to commit multiple killings on somebody. You will want to create a situation where they're not human anymore. Great example of this is the idea of barbarians. You know what barbarians are like? If you were Greek, you'd go out and you'd kill all the barbarians. Well, why? Because they weren't human anymore, because the word comes from people who go barbar. They're sheep. They're sheeple. Okay, the moment you can create another group of people and make them just animals like sheep who are not in control of themselves, and they just go barbar, and you make them barbarians, you can now pull armies together to go and kill them without any remorse or pity or love or sensitivity to harm, because they're not human anymore. And that's exactly what she's doing. And so there's potentially a psychopath, but there's also a psychopath who can quickly dehumanize people and on potentially very little true evidence. So that's what I got on that one. Chase, what do you got?
I agree with you. And I just learned that I was today years old when I learned about the origin of barbarians.
Barbarians, yeah.
Is disgustory a word?
Yeah, disgust. Yeah.
Yeah, I know disgust, but I never heard disgustory.
Gusto is the stomach. Yeah.
And disgustory.
Yeah, disgustory. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna add that.
So.
Next show, I'm gonna use disgustory.
But I'm English, so we make up words just as
right?
our language.
Okay.
So we make it up. Yeah.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard that. I'll use it next show and pretend like I'm just gonna lean into it too, like you did. Okay, sorry, Chase.
So in this video, we see no visible sclera. So this is her baseline is to show sclera. And sclera is the white part of your eye just above the colored part. And so she would raise the upper eyelids and show the white of her eye. We don't see this here. And I think this is more of a baseline video. There's I think a micro expression of disgust right when she's saying 7-year-old girl. And all the movement of her head is in line with her words throughout the entire video. I think we're seeing a truthful thought process present itself, because she's thinking in this, are they human? No. They did something bad before. Okay, I can go ahead and rob them. And I think that was probably a truthful thought process in her head. And in many cases of female murderers, serial murderers, Experts used to state back in the 70s that it's almost always the result of the female first witnessing a male commit murder, and then that makes her into the female serial killer. This has been debunked culturally, but there is a ton of evidence that precedes female killers coming into their psychopathy after witnessing a male do it first. That's still a very common theme, and I'm pretty sure, just looking at her background, we're seeing this here in this case as well. And when she says deserve to live, there's a tiny little sneer. You can see her pull the lip up and show the canine. And this is also kind of disdain or maybe a disgusted a thought process going on behind this, usually. That's all I got for this one. Greg?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a data point that makes this even more powerful. She's talking about her father, her biological father, who raped and killed a 7-year-old girl and hanged himself in jail for it. When they ask the question, this is an interesting thing to look at. She starts off at the very beginning with, you can see almost a, why would I hate him? Why would I not care about him? And then she ends with a lilting kind of a, as she's talking about they're pieces of puke and they deserve to be killed. And then she does some association. It's kind of like the thing you learned when you were a kid. All fish live in the water. All goldfish are fish. Therefore, all goldfish live in the water. She's associating, if I didn't care about my father and I thought it was okay for him to die because he raped, then he's a piece of puke. And this guy's a rapist, so he's also a piece of puke. So, of course, it's okay for me to kill him. That's what I hear here, listening to her, because she bookends it so cleanly with that, why would I guess? It's clear she's not stupid. When she's doing this, poorly educated, probably, but not stupid. And she is framing that argument right there. When I hear that, I want to go, okay, it's okay to tell me why you killed him. Come on, just tell me. And that's exactly what I do in the interrogation, because she's giving you iterative storytelling again. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I thought the interesting part for me was, because I'm approaching this like they're talking to a psychopath, is rape is horrible, man. It's horrible, but murder's horrible too. And of the two, which is worse in the law anyway, murder is worse. But she talks about murder like it's nothing to her. But the rape is the big part here. Because she says, because she isn't enraged when she's talking about any of this, where she should be normally. But then again, like you said, Greg, she's talking about her dad. So there must be something going on there. So that's why I think she's not a natural psychopath, but I think she's clinical from the when we see these expressions we're seeing and some of the things she says. But the thing that stood out most to me here was the part about the rape was the biggest problem she had with it. Not that he killed this little child, but that he raped her, because that's everything with her defense goes back to that. So at this point, I guess that's why she's making a big deal about it. I don't know. I can't figure it out just yet. Can't get it just yet.
Well, I heard that he raped a 7-year-old girl, and so I didn't really care. He raped a little girl and killed her, and it didn't. Anybody who rapes, to me, is a sick, deranged piece of puke that doesn't even deserve to live.
All right. We good?
Yep.
Then Wuornos says she turned the tables. He untied her, she got her gun, and shot him 4 times.
Well, let me ask you, in your opinion, did Richard Mallory deserve to die?
Okay. For what he did to me, the way he tortured me and everything, yes. Yes, he did. But, how can I explain this? Yes, he did deserve to die, but the way I left him was so kind, because the way he was going to leave me, I'm sure, would not have been this way. He would have left me probably dismembered, scattered out in the woods.
So you feel...
I left him with a rug over him so the vultures wouldn't get him.
But you left him dead.
That's right.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So at this one, she's given the opportunity to pontificate. You see her smile. That smile comes out. And you watch her go up right for eye accessing. Further up, Chase, you were talking about 9 o'clock earlier. This is more like 11 o'clock if you're looking at a clock. She's been asked, by the way, to consider something, and she is considering. It doesn't mean it's a lie. It means that she has a contemplation place that she's going to figure out what should she say and how should it go. That's not internal voice. That's a different kind of thing. And then there's a cadence shift. What he did to me, here's the fishing expedition again. Please ask what he did to me. She's chaffing and redirecting there, but she's hoping for a much better opportunity to chaff. Please ask what he did. Then when she's telling, her head is down, her brow is going, she's browbeating until she says what he did to me and her head bolts back. That's interesting. I would think when someone is saying this person did this to me, they would slam their head down and tell and have anger in that. But instead her head goes away. I would be suspicious that what she's saying at that point is not true. I would be suspicious that there's a deviation in her baseline, and I want to know exactly what caused that. Then she talks about leaving his body, and at the end, she's back to indignant with her head up and looking down her nose. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so let's just build her to another level based on what I saw and heard there. We've got this idea that maybe we have somebody psychopathic, certainly probably sociopathic, and then we can take her to another level because she's able to dehumanize very, very quickly. What happens here, which is the next step on, is she's able to consider an aesthetic around killing. So there's now different value systems, different levels of not just killing, but how you do it, whether you dismember, and that's a little bit worse than if you just kill somebody, roll them up in a carpet and protect them from the vultures. That you see this time and time again, I would suggest, in people who some would often use the term evil around because they don't have any other way of kind of, creating a bucket to put them in. I'm not sure I would particularly use that. I think it's a little bit reductive and moral or moralistic, certainly. But I do say this is a whole different level. Once you can now go from dehumanizing people into then going, well, how are we gonna do this? How are we going to do that? There's many different ways I could do this. And some ways are more interesting, better, nicer, more moral, less moral than others. Now we got something at a whole different level. And that's about the aesthetics, the way in which you commit the crime and judging that against others who have committed it. Whole different level. And we'll see some more of that later on. And keep that idea of evil in your mind, because I think she brings it up later on in a later interview. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, there's some larger head movement here while she's talking. There's more head movement, which is kind of a sales pitch here, wanting some agreement. There's some lip licking going on here, which many would tell you is deceptive in its own, but we're looking for changes in behavior. And we're looking for clusters of things that are unusual. And I agree, Mark, completely that there is a new narrative here that if I would have killed you, but then I stuck an ice cream cone in your hand, that's a whole different deal. That makes me a better person than Jeffrey Dahmer because I did the ice cream cone thing. He never did that. He cut people up. So there's a different level. And I think that's a different way that this person's seeing the world. And when people suffer abuse at a young age, they get very good from a psychological perspective at something called dissociation. And people, this is not a negative thing. People in the military are very good at this. People who are Olympic athletes are very good at dissociating from discomfort during training. But as a child going through these traumatic experiences, this dissociative process becomes a habit. And the habit of dissociation becomes a place where I'm going to retreat. Anything stressful happening to me, I can retreat into a place where I'm separated from my normal self. And this normal self doesn't have to feel pain, guilt, shame, regret, or anything like that, or disgust about something that the other me is participating in. And I think that this is what we're seeing right here. We're starting to see the illustration of her dissociative process at work here. And now I'd like you to notice in this video, when we play this again, she's now using her left side to present positive information. She's talking about the rug and being rolled up in the rug and how what she did versus what he would have done to her. So if I'm seeing somebody always gesture one way to talk about negative things, and they look over here and they're gesturing this way when they're talking about how good they are or something that they enjoyed, As the interrogator, I'm going to scoot over into the positive direction when I'm going to start talking to them about confessing. I'm going to lean that direction when I'm preparing to get them to confess to something. But that's it. So take note of that. If somebody looks or gestures a certain way when they're talking about negative stuff, you want to start scooting or leaning over in the opposite direction of that when you want to persuade them to do something, especially something that's not in their best interest, like confessing to a crime. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah. So I think she laughs at the top because she's trying to make it look like these horrible things he did to me are so horrible. Why wouldn't I? Or why wouldn't I have killed him? Then she starts pre-qualifying the answers. When I'm training, one of the things I always focus on is that pre-qualification. You've got someone who's being deceptive. They'll say something and you won't say anything, and they'll have a little space and they'll start qualifying your answers. But you get pre-qualifiers going, they've thought about this before, so they're ready for it. And that's what she starts doing. Before she ever gets to the yes, she starts pre-qualifying everything. And as well as chaff and redirect, because she gets all the way down to did he deserve to die to I'm a great person. I'm a kind person because I treated him differently than he would have treated me. How does she know what he was going to do? I mean, to be able to think stuff up like that, you've got to be thinking, maybe I'll do that as you go, as you go through it. I would think that's one of those things that would roll through your mind. And after she says yes, she makes that, and she starts making that comparison. I think this is where we're seeing in this question as it goes along. We've been talking about the feelings she might be feeling and disassociating from things. That's one of the things that I would say as a psychopath, she's more of the nurtured psychopath. I don't think her feelings when she was a little child were nurtured. Nobody said, don't do that to that puppy. That's, that hurts him. Don't say that to him or her because it'll hurt their feelings. I don't think that ever came into play. I think she was probably just, pushed aside and just like tried to grow up while she was there at the house. And maybe she loved her dad because when she talked about him earlier, she really didn't badmouth him for killing a little child. And her voice was all just like light and lilting and all that. And here it's not much different except when you get toward the end. So that's what I got.
Hey, anybody else notice a lot of times killers will say, I wrapped the body in a rug? She didn't. She said, I wrapped him in a rug. It's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Most of the time we see people use distancing language. None of that here.
Then Wuornos says she turned the tables. He untied her. She got her gun and shot him 4 times.
Well, let me ask you, in your opinion, did Richard Mallory deserve to die?
Okay. For what he did to me, the way he tortured me and everything, yes. Yes, he did. But, how can I explain this? Yes, he did deserve to die, but the way I left him was so kind, because the way he was going to leave me, I'm sure, would not have been this way. He would have left me probably dismembered, scattered out in the woods.
So you feel...
I left him with a rug over him so the vultures wouldn't get him.
But you left him dead.
That's right.
But I gotta ask you, one case, you claim rape, you say I shot him in self-defense. But 7 killings?
It wasn't every day. I was out prostituting, and I was dealing with hundreds and hundreds of guys. You got a jerk that's going to come along and try to rape me, I'm going to fight.
But you don't blow people away. You blow them away.
Oh, jeez.
But most prostitutes encounter some kind of
what
violence.
do they do? They get killed or something then? No. I don't believe in that. I believe in everybody has a right to self-defend themselves. I don't care who you are.
All right. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so Chase said a wonderful thing last episode we were on together, which was outsider lifestyle will elicit outsider behaviors. I think it was something like that. You can probably correct me if that's way off, Chase, but I think that was the idea. And I think that there's an element of what we see here, somebody who's been involved in for most of us, is a complete outsider lifestyle from a very early age. And what she's saying is, look, she is meeting males on a regular basis who should be executed. And she's kept it down low. She's kept the numbers low, because she hasn't done it every day. And what she's saying is, I'd live a life whereby I could execute people. There are people in my life that I meet on a daily basis that I should execute, but I've kept it to a minimum. I haven't done it every day. That's what I would take from that. You could kind of say she's exaggerating, but I think probably what she's doing is saying, you don't live my life, you don't know what I deal with. And I see a lot of disgust, disdain, contempt from her to the interviewer, who's saying, here's how you should live your life, here's the morals. And she's going, you don't live my life, so the same morals don't apply. Now, so the argument now has stepped forward in a way, because before she'd said, if we go back to video one, she'd says, I was doing the right thing. By doing this, I'm doing the right thing. Now she's gone that she's exercising her rights. Well, that's a whole different thing, because we as human beings, have, one country would say inalienable rights. They you can't even, you're not even going to discuss them. They're not even up for grabs. She's gone from what is the moral right to what is the human right here. Again, placing herself very clearly as, I'm a human being with human rights, and killing people was just exercising those rights. So now morals don't come into it. This is a humanity. This is a human endeavor that she's executing here. Again, really clever. Like, you'd want her on side if you were a spin doctor, for sure, but you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of her. And that's where we see these narrowing of the eyes, postural bump, chin raise, anger, disgust, disdain, almost all in one go from her. Very aggressive. The violence starts to, or aggression starts to rise. And yeah, you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of that. You also, it's becoming very clear, this is somebody who you would never want running a country. This is somebody who should never be in charge of large groups of human beings, because it would go badly wrong. Again, based on what I've seen from her being able to label people as not human, the dissociative aspect that Chase has been talking about, and the idea of, let's discuss how the aesthetics by which we can dispatch people. This is getting a really bad combination. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think she's talking about when she says, I didn't do it every day, she's afraid she's going to be labeled. She's already been labeled as a serial killer at this point, but I think she's still fighting that title, I guess you'd say. So I think that's maybe one of the reasons she so hard says, I didn't do it every day. Like, that's because I'm not a serial killer. I'm just defending myself. When you see somebody go on a rant like that after they've said something like that, that really makes me pay attention to what they just said. Once they start going down a road like that really hard, in a way, it's like chaff and redirect. I know I'm stuck on that today, but I don't know, man. This is, it's not odd behavior for her, but she's an odd fish here. When the interviewer says, you blew him away, she laughs, and then she goes on about the self-defense stuff. I think that's classic narcissistic behavior, because she's done nothing wrong at this point. She's only being the kind person she talked about earlier. She's done nothing wrong, and it's really tough for them to, or they don't ever say they've done anything wrong or that they're sorry. So this discussing a horrible event and laughing about it like that, especially when it's something that you're accused of doing, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. Sometimes you'll see the first responders at a scene that's just horrific. Sometimes they'll get off by themselves and try to laugh a little bit to get some of that. It's so weird. You got to stay realistic. So that's when you'll see that. But here, it goes against everything we believe morally or normal people do. And it's another thing I think that shows she's a psychopath. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. I think gallows humor is in the psyche of people who work in horrible businesses. You have to have some of that. It just is there. It's a way to release nervous energy in that. That's not the case for her. I see pride, delight, and amusement in her face when she's talking about this until she gets to your point, Mark, contemptuous, disdaining, all of those pieces. And for me, that moment happens when she puts the barrier to her face, kind of does a little disdain, and releases all of that back toward this woman. And it's about the woman. It's not about the act. She says, I was selective, is what she's saying. I didn't kill everybody. I was selective. So I'm less of a monster than I could have been, quite frankly. And the people I did kill, they were pieces of puke. Remember? She's telling her story. She's moving forward. And her eyes open wide to illustrate that when she says prostitution, I think she feels justified. And then this is why when a person feels justified, you can't tell them that what they did was wrong or abnormal as long as it was justified. And I think she's built this story for herself that's justified. When she laughs at blew away, I think she's thinking, I shot him with a 22. That's not really blowing him away, but I did kill him. I think that's just my conjecture when I'm paying attention to what she's doing. That little pursing of her lips after she drinks her tea or coffee or whatever she's drinking, that sets her up to go right back at this woman. Then we see narrowing of the eyes, that one side of the face rise, her teeth show disapproval. There's a list of things that you've already listed so eloquently, Mark. I'm not going to hit them, but it's about her now. She's going back at her. She got the opportunity to walk away from why she's justified by only picking puke and killing puke, and now she's going to go back at this woman. That's what I got. Chase, what do you got?
Well, I had 11 things here to talk about. Now I've got 2. So let me cover those 2. So great points, everybody. I think it's a seriously good performance here with the baton gesture, where she's right at the beginning in a very slow tone, like a school teacher, trying to get the point across. And this is what you'll see politicians do who want you to really get a singular point. We wrote the bill. We wrote the bill. That kind of thing. Trump does it. Everybody does it. But the one thing I thought was interesting here that kind of speaks to her psychology is when we know that she rarely, but when she's talking about something positive, gestures to her left, looks over there to her left. Is the only time we see that here is when she's saying hundreds of guys and she's going right to the left. And I think we're only seeing that because that's the friends that she was referring to in the other video. These are the friends that she was making, and the amount of people was proof, was her what we called, or what I called, currency. A couple of clips back, she's showing all of this currency. She's showing that, you know, I live kind of an aberrated lifestyle, but I make a lot of these friends, which not a lot of other people can make that many friends, because she's viewing this through a childhood lens, and we kind of carry these childhood lenses into adulthood without our awareness and without our consent. All of us, not just psychopaths. This is everybody. And I think that's an interesting and maybe a little sad thing that we're seeing here in this one video. That's all I got.
But I got to ask you, one case, you claim rape, you say I shot him in self-defense. But 7 killings?
It wasn't every day. I was out prostituting, and I was dealing with hundreds and hundreds of guys. You got a jerk that's going to come along and try to rape me, I'm going to fight.
But you don't blow people away. You blow them away.
Oh, jeez.
But most prostitutes encounter some kind of
Yeah, what
violence.
do? They get killed or something then? No, I don't believe in that. I believe in everybody has a right to self-defend themselves. I don't care who you are.
Do you realize that what you did was wrong?
And I'm getting sick and tired of the families, too. Now, I've got a message for the families, okay? Here's a message for the families. You owe me. Your husband raped me violently, Mallory and Carskadden, and the other 5 tried, and I went through a heck of a fight to win. You owe me, not me owe you.
All right. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just one thing on this, which is the extraordinary nature of her going on the offensive there rather than defensive, immediately looks straight down the camera and spins the whole situation on a dime, in that she's now attacking potentially entirely innocent bystanders, just by, people just with a relationship to people who she has murdered and may or may not have been bad people. I don't know anything about that. I don't know whether she really knows about that. I'm not quite sure. I don't have all the information, but it is quite extraordinary. Again, we do see that in some of the extraordinary people throughout history who have had an ability and way more power than her. It's very fortunate, actually, that this particular individual has very little power. Very fortunate, because if she was somebody who had a large amount of power, we would be probably looking at way more decimation than just 7 people at this point, I would suggest, because she feels absolutely vindicated at this point to go on the attack, when the rest of society is probably going to feel a little more pity for those relations. They may be, if it were us, the perpetrator, we may feel a little bit of remorse, and we may be more sensitive to the harm that we might do by being so accusatory to bystanding family members in this situation. So, extraordinary situation. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing here is delusion at this point. It's not just, I'm going to make up a bunch of crap and spit some stuff from court. I think that she is convinced of this, and I think the dissociation provides the avenue for this delusion. There is a lack of all emotion here except anger, and we're seeing this throughout these videos. There's no emotion except anger. There's a few moments of pride, which Greg talked about in the previous video. The only moment the upper part of the sclera, the white part of her eye, is visible is at the exact moment she says the word husband. And I think that's very telling. I'll let you decide what that might mean while she's looking directly at the camera here. But as you're watching this clip, when this clip comes up, I want you to just do one thing for me and think of the difference between winning and surviving in these two narratives. Win versus survive, and just think of that viewpoint as the clip comes back on here for you. So, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, you covered almost everything that I had there. I agree. She is, whether this is, she feels justified, whether she believes this, whatever it is, all of her, everything she's doing, from the batoning to her illustrators of other kinds, to her bugging her eyes, all of those pieces, and she's talking in down tones, all of those things are to her a clear message in what she believes and what she's saying. And I think it's a carryover, Mark, from the last video we watched. She's now on the defensive and she's going to attack. That's her approach. And she's now saying, you owe me. That's the whole purpose of this thing. The messaging's congruent. You can tell what she thinks because she's showing you what she thinks. This is not her. There's one place in this entire thing, I think, that she has a throwaway word. And when she says he raped me violently, and Scott, you call it fading facts, but that word should be more pronounced and it's less pronounced than the others, which I think is kind of a weird thing. Now, guys, the other thing to remember is, if in fact these guys were trying to rape her, even if she's a prostitute, and they were trying to rape her, we're not defending that. What we're saying is, here's a person who has, whether it's delusion or something else in her head, that she has the right to kill these men and that you owe her because it's your family that's caused her pain. All of the messaging looks like she's telling the truth. So from her point of view, the only thing we can hope that is Chase is delusion. So I'm with you. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, you guys got most everything I was going to say. I feel like Chase for the last one. I think if you don't think she's a psychopath at this point, I think you need to go start all over and start reading about psychopaths again, because she can do no wrong. And when she looks down the barrel of that camera and is telling these people how these guys raped her and how mean they were to her and tortured her to their to these people's families like that, holy smokes. There's no understanding of empathy in there anywhere. anywhere. That's horrible. And it looked like, what reminded me of when we were laughing about that was it looked like either a car salesman or a politician trying to sell something, pretty much both the same things. But that's what it looked like, because he was looking right down again. You owe me. You do. It's not me. And the whole time saying how it's not her fault. If you really want to make her mad, too late now. But if you wanted to, you'd have to tell her something was her fault. Why was this your fault? Explain why this is your fault. That's how you get up in her brain, get her all PO'd. So.
Do you realize that what you did was wrong?
And I'm getting sick and tired of the families, too. Now, I've got a message for the families. Okay, here's a message for the families. You owe me. Your husband raped me violently, Mallory and Carskadden, and the other 5 tried, and I went through a heck of a fight to win. You owe me, not me owe you.
One thing that Greg was saying just a second ago, I just want to add on here, and this is based on research by Dr. Nathan, Gaillard. Calls this positive impression management, but they've proven that psychopaths are not actually more successful at being deceptive than everyday people, even though they do it more often. And psychopaths and normal people score almost identically on a polygraph test, but they both score the same, but only when verbal indicators were rated, they scored way better than normal people. If it was they could just hear the audio and they couldn't see the person, and a random person is determining whether or not they're lying, if it's just verbal, they score way better than the average person. So I think that's one of the reasons we're hearing so much conviction in the voice here. And we're seeing kind of a mismatch with the nonverbals.
So push that a step further, Chase, and think what would happen if they were just writers. What would happen? What would happen if they were writing manifestos or treatises and publishing those to?
Well, they usually try, at least.
Yeah. Now then you've got something very, very convincing. Very convincing.
One of the things that people are going to come out and say is, you guys say that they don't know what facial expressions look like, and hers look real. But I think if you're making your living hitchhiking and prostituting, and you stand on the side of the road going, you probably not get many offers, because they're going to think, hey, that's a serial killer on the road. So you have to learn to fake it, kind of your Chinese food story. You learn wherever you learn. And so all those larger than life movements probably have served her well.
We should do that Kuklinski guy, the Iceman.
Yeah, for sure.
Because for the longest time, I couldn't make up my mind about that guy for years. I couldn't make up my mind if he was nature versus nurture, which one he laid in. But this one here, I'm pretty sure is nurture. But I don't know why I'm bringing that up.
So I have to come clean and tell the world the lies that went on through my mouth. I mean, now prosecutors and cops.
And that you killed the 7 men.
Huh?
That you killed those men in cold blood.
Yeah, and I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer. Not so much like thrill kill. I was into the robbing biz. I mean, serial killers are in this thrill killing jazz. I was into the robbing, and eliminate a witness. But still, then again, I got a number, so it's serial killer. But I'm coming clean before I go in that execution chamber and be executed, that I killed him.
And so when you met them, from the beginning, did you know that you were going to kill them? When they picked you up in their cars?
I pretty much had them selected that they were going to die.
All right, I'm going to go first on this one. This is where you see, obviously it's years later, there's a huge difference in her behaviors as compared to the earlier video. It's a lot more calm. She's talking in a vernacular that's a little more sophisticated than we've seen before. So that gives me the idea or the impression that she's been talking to a lawyer, or she's been reading. Well, she's probably been reading a lot. But she's talked to somebody that said, here's what you need to say, or here's what I would say if I were you, Also, I think maybe she's on some kind of prescription drug to help calm her down or something, because this is such a dramatic change in behavior. I don't think she's had an accident where she's got brain damage or something, but I think there's something going on there from prescription point of view that she's in. Let's see what else. We don't see any anger, no disgust, no contempt, nothing. It's just almost, for her, almost a blank expression the whole time, but she still got that chin back, as the narcissist will do, the narcissistic part of her. But again, I think this might be a last ditch effort from her attorneys to say, hey, man, go out there, you got to say this. Maybe at the last second, the governor will call in. Now, in a minute, my whole theory here gets squashed by something else she says and does, but that's where I'm sitting now. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm not going to add a lot to what you just said, except for she does a fading fact set. Yeah, you kill these men in cold blood and affects what the guys, yeah, kind of drifts off there. She is a lot less emotional than she was in the other place, but remember, she was just captured in the wild from the other one. So when the psychiatrist says she's the 3 or 4 year old in terms of knowing about rules, well, guess what? Institutionalizing you will teach you that there are rules and they do apply to you. What we know is the more you deal with people who are prisoners, in male prisoners who are, for example, prisoner of war camp, their testosterone levels drop. Endocrine systems change how you function. All kinds of things. Your highs and lows will change. All of that changes as a result. Her mouth is awfully dry, which makes me think that it's possible she's on some kind of drug, whatever kind of drug that causes her to have a dry mouth, because she's constantly mouth grooming. We didn't see that in Baseline earlier for Fight or Flight. We saw her tongue jut a few times, but nothing as dramatic as we're seeing now. Of course, she is older, so you have that. She has her brow up. That's not a request for approval. That's, are you getting it? And she does have that head twisted to the side. I think what we're seeing here is a lot of therapist talk or lawyer talk, but probably therapist talk. Yeah, I do have to say that, boom, boom, boom. And, she's learned to play the game. She's learned to do what there's no surprise that somebody who has done all of that other stuff to get what they want can also learn to play the new rules of the game and get whatever they want. That's what I see. Chase, what do you got?
Yep, agree. There's this licking lips right before she pronounced serial killer was a big data point for me. And I thought that this was going to be a thing until I started watching the rest, the other videos that we're going to talk about in a minute. So I do think the dry mouth plays a part. I think I read a report by the Department of Justice recently that over the last 20 years, trazodone is the most commonly prescribed drug in American correctional facilities. Don't quote me on that. I think that was in the last 20 years. And when she says coming clean, there's a little grief muscle. It's very, very tiny. I had to put it up on the giant TV here and then zoom in on it to make sure, because I don't want to say it and then look like an idiot in the YouTube comments. So when the interviewer asked, did you know that you were going to kill them? This is when we see some activity here. There's lip licking, which could be dry mouth, lip retraction, there's lip compression. Then there's chin boss movement here. For the first time, we see a little bit of what could be shame or guilt. And this is the muscle we know, and that a lot of peer-reviewed research by people way smarter than me have proven that this is a common muscle used in shame and guilt. I think it's very interesting towards the end here. She uses the word selected to die. She selects the people. This implies power, control, and choice, which are, like I said a few videos ago, these are all the things, power, control, and choice, all the things that she lacked in her childhood. And now she's been able to reestablish that by selecting who was going to die before they did. Mark, what do you got?
I agree. I think it's probably her last-ditch attempt at some kind of appeal in some way. I don't know whether that's rational at this point, and some lawyer has said, hey, I reckon there's a chance if you can convince people of X. I'm not quite sure. But here's how I'd come to that. I have to come clean. I gotta come clean. Well, surely it should be I want to come clean, or I owe it to the victims to come clean. But no, I have to, I got to. Like, what's the motivator? behind that? Why have you got to? Why? What happens if you do this? Or what do you think will happen if you do this? And in return, something else happens. So it seems like a last-ditch appeal to me. Oh, and then that stress on execution before I go in the execution chamber and get executed. So clearly the idea of execution is paramount at that point. Again, helps me kind of think this is probably the last-ditch attempt. There's something of kind of, I think what some of you guys would call it a mini confession there of, well, it was really about robbery, not about, killing anybody for anybody else. I was just into the robbery thing. I guess the killing kind of just cascaded out of me just wanting money and robbing people. But then that's undercut, just as Chase said, by this idea of, but they were selected for death. Now that idea in itself, that you have somebody who can select, that's premeditation. It is, it is bureaucratic as well. There is a selection process, not I had a gut instinct I needed to kill this person, or, it's just these events happened and therefore obviously they were going to die to my hand. It's a selection process. There's like an interview you put in your resume, there's an interview, there's a whole bureaucracy that goes on here. And again, that's chilling because if she had more power and she's able to dehumanize, she is able to decide how people die in an aesthetic manner and have a selection process for it. Well, it's lucky, Stalin was already invented, because you wouldn't want her again in that kind of position, because it's that kind of mentality that does some of the world's worst atrocities. There, that's what I got for you on that one.
So I have to come clean and tell the world the lies that went on through my mouth. I mean, now prosecutors and cops.
And that you killed the 7 men.
Huh?
That you killed those men in cold blood.
Yeah, and I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer. Not so much like thrill kill. I was into the robbing biz. I mean, serial killers are in this thrill killing jazz. I was into the robbing. And eliminate a witness. But still, then again, I got a number, so it's serial killer. But I'm coming clean before I go in that execution chamber and be executed, that I killed him.
And so
like
when
this.
you met them, from the beginning, did you know that you were going to kill them? When they picked you up in their cars?
I pretty much had them selected that they were going to die.
But when you're saying that there was no self-defense, so there was no self-defense?
No, there was no self-defense. I'm being really straight up about everything. There's no self-defense. I'm really sorry what happened about everything. I was in this, to me, this world is nothing but evil, and all of us are full of evil one way or another in whatever we do. We have evil in us, all of us do. And my evil would just happen to come out because of the circumstances of what I was doing. Hitchhiking, hooking, on the road. I was a homeless person all my life. And then the hitchhiking, hooking, I learned off the homelessness and cruising all over the United States of America and stuff. And so learning how to be a hooker as a hitchhiker.
Right.
Eventually got tiring. In the end, I carried the gun for protection, but then I got where I was getting a real problem, and our rent was due, $1,200 behind. Tyra was doing a lot of beer drinking and stuff. She wanted to go out all the time, so she was burning up the money I was making. I was making good, about $200-300 a day, sometimes
But
$150.
and did she know what you were doing?
Oh yeah, Ty always knew everything I was doing.
Chase, what do you got?
I think the smile here right at the beginning is likely her admitting to lying, not the enjoyment of the killing, as I've maybe seen another body language expert talk about here. I think that she lives in a regressive psychological state, and I think being maybe caught in one of these lies is triggering this regression, and her defense mechanism is to pretend that that's cute But the whole narrative here, and I'm going to do a mark, the whole narrative here, there's a story about the world being evil, and she's a part of it just like you are, selling the idea that all of us are full of it. And all she's doing is saying, here's the part that I have, and maybe this is different than the part that you have. And Mark, I'm sure, has some stuff to say on this. But as interrogators, there's a list of things that we have to do, but there's 4 of them that are really big. And we're seeing her squeeze all 4 of these interrogation techniques into one sentence here. In one little package, we're seeing socialization, minimization, rationalization, and projection, all in a perfect package here in this video. You watch this again. Here's the homework for you. Since you're a panelist here, you're a subscriber, your homework is to watch this video again, maybe go back later, but watch this again and cover her whole face except for her forehead. I think this is a perfect example of what we're talking about when we want somebody to agree with us. When you hear Mark or Greg or Scott say they're seeking acceptance or they're seeking some kind of approval from the other person, this is what we're seeing. Just watch her forehead and then listen to exactly what she's talking about when you see the eyebrows go up in this video. And I think it's going to surprise you what she wants you to agree with and what she doesn't care much whether or not you agree or not. So, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I think as human beings get near the end of their life, whether it's natural or in this case, she's going to get lethal injection, you reconcile what you've done. And somebody's there to help you. In this case, I guarantee you they're therapists and everything else. So it's a really easy walk for her now to say, look, it's not that there's something wrong with me. It's that there's something wrong with humans. All of us have a problem, to your grand narrative. And that sounds a hell of a lot to me like somebody said, look, if you had been raised in a different situation, if you had done this, if you'd done that, you might have turned out different, but you didn't. Here's what happened. I don't see anything. This to me, I think we'll see in a video or two how much this matters to her. We'll hear her start to talk in different ways. But if you look at her, this mouth grooming, again, I don't think it has anything to do with fight or flight. I think it's drugs. I think whatever she's taking, or maybe it's age, I don't know, but whatever she's taking is causing her to do that. But when she does the verbal tick, as you would call it, Mark, then she goes into listen to my story. Not only did I live in a bad world, but then we needed money because my girlfriend drank up all the beer and used all the money, and I had to work extra hard, and I made a lot of money, but we didn't have. She's starting that chaff and redirect and hoping you'll pick up something. Even at this state in her life, when she should be saying, look, I'm a horrible person. I kill people for money. Yeah, there were reasons I did it. She starts to chaff and redirect and start to tell her story and run down the path, hoping you'll pick up something and give her an out. That's what I hear, what I see. I don't see that she has real, genuine sorrow. I didn't see anything in there. Later, I'll see one place where her brows rise to a point in the middle, which is sorrow, but it's not about this, and it's got nothing to do with this. She's got a reason why all this happened. She's trading guilt. Yeah, I needed money, and Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I agree on the narrative that's coming out there. It really is my struggle, isn't it? And look up what that is in German. So again, you wouldn't want this person in charge of anything bigger than the work that she's been doing. It is no surprise to me that she brings up the concept of evil at this point. I could see it coming right in the early videos that we saw with her. She is following a classic path of nihilism, a general philosophy of nihilism, which says partly that there just is no point. There is just no point to this because everything is either inherently evil or systematically will have pressure put on you so that evil will express itself. So it is a consistent struggle against what fate has delivered you, being a human, and society has put on you. There is no way out of this. Where this tends to progressively go over time, and she does hint at this in some of the final, I think, videos that we'll look at today, usually goes in a burn it all down philosophy, which is let's just destroy everything, which again is why you don't want this kind of pattern to ever have control of anything with any kind of total destruction attached to it. Very, very, very bad. But a classic philosophy that we'd expect there. And just, I mean, ultimately, when you look at this, you have to say, yes, terrible situation that this woman has been in. Absolutely. We can't deny that. Others have been in that same situation and worse, and have chosen, consciously and unconsciously, not to respond in the way that she responds. Okay? Right or wrong, they have chosen her path is not the only path in this, but she isn't willing to look at that in this situation. That's never been discussed by her. It seems a fait accompli that you'd kill 7 people and you would bureaucratically work out who those are going to be, and you'd hold back a little bit because you could have done way, way more if you'd have wanted to. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Scott, what do you got?
Thank you.
I deleted my notes, and you guys covered everything. I say we take a pee. What do you think?
Okay.
Yep.
So you were very close?
Yeah, we're.
All right.
And I still miss her, and I still love her, but I'm really sorry about everything I've done. I miss Ty. I lost Tyra over this, and then the people that lost their loved ones and everything. I really think first about the people that lost their loved ones, and then Ty second, because I have to put them in first on this whole thing. I'm really sorry for them losing their loved ones, man. I know the feeling.
Greg, what do you got?
So she starts off with a real smile when she's talking about this person she loves, this, I forget, Tyra. And then she says, I miss her. I am so sorry I lost her. She does kind of that taffy pulling thing with her eyes, trying to see that you're approving. And then she says, and I feel sorry. Oh, and I really also feel sorry for people who lost theirs. Like a little child who's like, you believe me, don't you? That request for approval at the forehead. She does a little bit of a grief, of a arching of the brows there, but it's not real. You'll see in a minute in the next video what's real sorrow for her when she does. But she does a little fake sorrow there, like she thinks it looks. And she remembers as an after fact that she should be talking about these people who she killed, not whose families lost them, but who she killed. She doesn't say that, but when she's doing that request for approval, that sorry, she goes on and on and on. It's just a sad, fake attempt. That's all I see. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Greg, that the right muscles are moving for a true Duchenne smile, but that true smile has other dynamics to it as well. The length that it holds on for, and it's kind of, I guess it's attack and decay as well. In that, look, I can give you a true Duchenne smile, but I'll do it very, very fast. Okay, it was there. You can play it back slowly. Yeah, it was there, but it happened too fast and it disappeared too quickly. And therefore, Greg gave me that response of, and the interviewer does the same. So the interviewer doesn't buy that smile. It's what I call the Pan Am smile, in that all the right muscles are moving, but it comes on too quick and then it just disappears too quick. Then we get that risible mask of, I'm really sorry about everything that I've done. I mean, and what I would say looks like concern to me, Greg, but certainly no shame, no sorrow. Yeah, but concern, well, I reckon it's probably concern of, are you buying this? And then we get, I'm really sorry for them losing their loved ones. I think we get a look of approval around that. The last thing I'll say about this is she says, I know, right at the end, I know the feeling. I think the stress should be on, I know the feeling. So it's about the knowing, the association, rather than the feeling part of it. For me, the stress is in the wrong place. She wants us to know that she has feelings, not that she has empathy. We want to know, does she have empathy? She wants us to know, first of all, I have feelings. And that's why she puts the stress, I believe, on feeling. I wouldn't, and this will come later as well, I wouldn't trust her as far as I can throw her. I would trust zero zero about what's going on there. Chase, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you, Greg. This smile about her partner is genuine. And she says, I still love her. And we see some grief here, a little shame, grief, chin boss movement, this chin muscle right here. She says, really sorry about everything. There's an instant, like you said, Mark, rapid and instant change in the facial expression. And she's still wanting to sell an image. And then she goes into apology. And this apology that she offers up to you features what I think are psychopathic admissions. The apology is, here's the key words that she's using: people, lost, loved ones, them, those, everything that happens. Psychopaths, in my estimation, are more likely to focus on events and not actions. I'm sorry I did those things never comes out of her mouth. I'm sorry those events took place. That is a big deal, because that's illustrating not only how she's like selling this out, but how her mind works and how she processes this. It's not that I did all these things to these people. She views it as this event happened, almost like an emotionless computer recording a piece of information that happened. So it's events versus actions. That's one of the big filters that I use when somebody is making any kind of apology. Is it about the event or is it about their actions? So that's a good way to tell in a lot of apologies, not whether or not somebody's a psychopath, but whether or not the apology is sincere. Scott, what do you got?
So we're seeing a group of mimicked emotions or facial expressions she's seen on other people, because those are what we're seeing. That's why her glabella comes together, but it doesn't show you the grief. I can't do it, Greg. Grief muscle. Yeah, I can't do it. So her glabella comes together right there. It comes together right there. That's a little spot right in there. But the other stuff doesn't happen. And Chase, I missed the thing on the chin boss there. I missed that completely. I didn't even look. And so we're seeing her imitate these or mimic these emotions and expressions she's seen other people do.
So you were very close?
Yeah, we're...
All right.
And I still miss her, and I still love her. But I'm really sorry about everything I've done. I missed Ty. I lost Tyra over this. And then the people that lost their loved ones and everything. I really think first about the people that lost their loved ones, and then Ty second. Because I have to put them in first on this whole thing. I'm really sorry for, them losing their loved ones, man. I know the feeling.
We don't
my
have
favorite of all.
Oh, no, we're going to do it.
What about with Richard Mallory? Because you gave that testimony with Richard Mallory.
Yeah, Richard Mallory was not self-defense. Richard Mallory I killed him I needed his wheels to move the stuff, and he had the right amount of money I needed to move into the apartment, so.
But what about the testimony that you gave in court about?
Oh, that's just, like I was saying.
About the Visine and...
Oh, I was just doing a lying biz. That was just my lying gig, try to beat the system.
Really? So that was really all, none of it was true? Because in court you gave such a graphic description of what had happened with Richard Mallory.
Yeah, after sitting around thinking how I could drum up a story,
That was pretty convincing.
Was it? That's sad.
Well, I thought so.
God, that's sad.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so the most interesting thing here for me is they're both playing each other with this idea of innocence at the moment. Him, the interviewer, being, slightly bemused by it, confused, innocent, shall we say, and her playing the same thing. She has that look up to the side, that kind of what seems to be a relatively kind of cute look. Again, she's playing that innocence, and they both play along with each other until she completely destroys him by going, well, that's pretty sad that you bought in to my lying biz there. And it's quite a wonderful maneuver. Again, classic of vicious politicians. And thankfully, she's not in charge of anything more than probably some prison laundry at that point. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, this is my favorite so far. And my subtitle on this is, hey, dumbasses. This is her walking through and turning back into who she is. Now, no matter if it's a medication or it's institutionalization or whatever, she's still the same person, deep buried under all that. I always say all we are is like a pearl or an onion, and if you get a flawed thing in the middle and you just keep adding layers to it, you can get bad things. If you watch her, she's rifling for words as she's resisting her natural tendency to kind of want to lie. And then she's amused after the fact at her lying biz and how she got away. It's almost like a little Duper's delight there, but it's just amusement. You see her face kind of light up that she got away with it. You do see a little bit of sorrow when she says, I was trying to beat the system. And I have a hard time doing sorrow without the grief. But when your brows rise in the middle to a little point, that's sorrow. And you see a little bit of that in her when she's talking about trying to game the system. And then she does that coy look, that little kind of, oh, shucks, you caught me. And then she does exactly what you said. When she looks at him, there's a whole lot of stuff in that face when she says that sad. She looks away. There's skepticism with a brow rise, and there's contempt in her face when she does it. It's just condemning as it can be. And I think we're seeing the person there. That's probably what her personality is like. And, you know, no matter how much medication you give somebody, there's still a little bit of that left. That's all I see. Chase, what do you got?
I'll make this quick. She kind of thinks it's cute. And this is the first smile in the clip when she is talking about her court testimony. And since I'm in the profiling biz, here's what I would recommend you do. If you watch this on mute, you're going to see behavior consistent with a child receiving an over-the-top compliment, a compliment throughout this video. The aw shucks kind of self-effacement that we tend to go towards when we get over the top complimented. You're going to see that here, child compliment response behavior.
What about with Richard Mallory? Because you gave that testimony with Richard Mallory.
Yeah, Richard Mallory was not self-defense. Richard Mallory I killed him I needed his wheels to move the stuff, and he had the right amount of money I needed to move into the apartment, so.
But what about the testimony that you gave in court about?
Oh, that's just, like I was saying.
About the Visine and...
Oh, I was just doing a lying biz. That was just my lying gig, try to beat the system.
Really? So that was really all, none of it was true? Because in court you gave such a graphic description of what had happened with Richard Mallory.
Yeah, after sitting around thinking how I could drum up a story, you know.
That was pretty convincing.
Was it? That's sad.
Well, I thought so.
God, that's sad.
All right, well, let's throw it down the room, and we'll talk about in 30 seconds or less what we think's happening here and give our opinions on it. We'll start with Mark, go to Chase and Greg, then I'll wrap it up. Mark?
Yeah, if you meet somebody else like this, don't give them control of anything very particularly important, or especially people's lives, or any kind of bureaucratic system whereby they could affect people's lives, for all the reasons that you've heard about throughout this whole thing. She is excessively bad news, a little bit more than many of the other people who we've come across. It's just good news that she didn't have a great deal of power, else we could be looking at a real massive catastrophe here. Chase.
The one thing that you've got in common with her, and we all do, is that we make stories in childhood, and then we tend, sometimes in a bad way, to make those stories come true into our adulthood. So I would go in to ask yourself, what did I experience that I unknowingly made into this looped story? And if we have these, they become these self-fulfilling prophecies that are way back in the unconscious. We're not aware of them. So ask yourself the question, it's your homework as a panelist, what have I repeated to myself over and over that actually turns out to be true all the time? What do I say to myself all the time that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? And we can start to identify some of those things. It can really help us to grow. Greg?
Yeah, guys, I'm taking nothing away from the horror that made this person, that created this person, because she came from a family where her mother left her with her parents, with her grandparents. Grandparents were alcoholics and abusive, and then it went worse and worse and worse from there. All of that said, there's still 7 people who were killed by this woman, who she's convicted of killing, at least, as far as we know. Could be more, could be less. What I see here is this person who is wrapped, to your point, Chase, we all start with that little kernel and we just keep layering and layering and layering. And she learned to be successful in a very horrible environment. And what it led to is a horrible thing. What we see here, Mark, to your point, there's an old saying in the South, that's like putting lipstick on a pig. This is putting lipstick on a pig. You're trying to fix something you can't fix. Well, at the end, they fixed the problem, and there are going to be people who hate us for saying that she's evil, she did this, she did that, but she killed 7 people. She ended up getting put to death for it. This is a horrible case. I don't think there's anything good to come out of it, but I do see a hell of a lot of deception. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think this might be one of my favorite ones because we're seeing the example of not just a straight up psychopath. We're seeing one that looks to me like is a psychopath that's been nurtured. We talked about the difference in nature versus nurture earlier. The nature version is the kind that's born. Something's wrong with their amygdala, something's wrong with their brain, and they're not. It doesn't function correctly. In this case, I think she was probably beat up a lot as a kid, probably raped a lot as a kid, and had some big problems with her family. Nobody nurtured those feelings of sympathy and empathy, especially empathy. As we go through this, if you pay attention to what she's saying and when she looks like she's smiling and when she looks like she's sad or whatever, the only real emotion we're seeing is anger here, I believe. She may feel a little bit lighthearted when she talks about her girlfriend. I don't know, but that's a tough call there. But I think it's great because we can see the differences in the two, in the nature versus nurture. All right, I think it's a good one, fellas, and I'll see you next time. Oh wait, that's
subscribe.
Right, Mark. Let's subscribe. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe. Just hit that little button down there that says subscribe, and you will be a panelist. All right, we good?
Good.
All right, see you guys in a bit.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
The behavior panel.
Picking up some earthy notes.
Right.
I think it has hints of pepper. Yeah.
No, yeah. Maybe a floral undertone.
Yeah. That is an area that has been ill-explored, the idea of wine psychics.
I think we should do an episode
Level
on
above
wine
wine
psychics.
tasting.
I do
Yeah,
too.
wine psychic. Network, yeah.
What are you doing?
We're
You
taking
taking,
wine psychics.
you taking your temperature?
Yeah, I got 102, man.
Oh, really?
I thought,
Yeah.
ooh, dude, let's
Nice.
get through this.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't feel bad.
The COVID, I heard the new
Send over
variant.
one of these to you.
I heard the new variant from South Africa makes your joints hurt and you feel kind of. I said, that's how I feel all the time. I got 20 years in the Army.
No van a ser, no van a ser,